The Pittsburgh Steelers are probably one of the most odd teams in the entire NFL. A team that has a culture of winning, but just not winning come playoff time. It's a weird culture to have, but it's a culture nonetheless. And I think Mike Tomlin wouldn't have it any other way. A winning culture is better than a losing culture. Just ask me, a Dolphins fan, believe me. Now, with that being said, the Steelers have a couple of problems that are going to be very, very difficult to handle. Um, for one, they don't really have a QB on the roster right now. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are both free agents. So that's a weird situation to have. And this year, they're not really in the best draft position to get a QB. I believe they have the 21st overall pick. Not an ideal spot at all. So with that being said, let's cut to the chase. What should they do? Let's start with the QB position. Okay. I think you have two options here at the QB spot. You can either re-sign Justin Fields and give him a crack at it, or, and this is what I would do, Matthew Stafford is available for trade. Trade for Matthew Stafford. I think that should be a priority for the Steelers. You really want to win now? Matthew Stafford is a win now QB. 37 years old, but he still slings it, let me tell you. And I would imagine Matthew Stafford and George Pickens would get along perfectly. Him and Calvin Austin get along perfectly. I do think that there is really no point, in my opinion. There's no point, in my opinion, of holding back this roster any longer. A QB has been holding him back for a long time. I think it's time for the QB to be the reason this team gets back to the promised land. With Matthew Stafford on this team, that already elevates his team to a higher standard. Targeting guys like George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Calvin Austin, and hopefully Jaylen Warren in the backfield. Now, you have a problem at corner, Pittsburgh. You have a huge problem at corner. Now, luckily, the Steelers have cap space, a lot of cap space, and I think you can use that cap space to sign some of these corners. Now, just looking at some of the corners right now that are in the free agent market, you got guys like Carlton Davis, guys like DJ Reed. And honestly, if you got any of those guys, I'd be completely fine with it. As a matter of fact, I'd go as far as to say Carlton Davis would probably love to come to Pittsburgh and play for Mike Tomlin. I bet he would. And in my opinion, DJ Reed, probably the same thing. So with that being said, I think you need to go out there in free agency and you need to get a corner. Carlton Davis should be the target. And another thing you got to go out there and get is a receiver. I know you already have George Pickens and Calvin Austin. And maybe you could draft a receiver. If Emeka Egbuka is available and you pick him, hands up in the air, cool, that's fine. I prefer you take somebody else. I think Kenneth Grant would be perfect given the fact that your defensive lineman group is relatively old. Cam Hayward, how many more years does he have left? I think Kenneth Grant is the perfect guy to pass the torch to him. Now, as for other wide receivers, Stephon Diggs is available. He's coming off injury. Amari Cooper is available. He had a shaky year with the Bills. DeAndre Hopkins, let's not talk about that. But here's a receiver that I think would be very interesting. Marquise Brown. Now, Marquise Brown fought injury last year, so he didn't really get to play for the Chiefs. I don't know if he's going to go back with the Chiefs. But I think that'd be an interesting signing. And the reason is that I think it fits perfectly. I think a wide receiving core of Pickens, Hollywood Brown, and Calvin Austin with a QB like Matthew Stafford would be a really good. And we all know when Mike Tomlin defense is going to show up. They always do show up. You got guys like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward's still going to be there. Minka Fitzpatrick. You build an offense surrounding that kind of defense, surrounding that kind of offense. This team could make a little bit of noise in the AFC North and maybe even win the division. Another thing that I want to do, I think it's pretty clear that the running back room in Pittsburgh is very complicated, but I don't think it's as nuanced as it needs to be. I think Najee Harris you should let walk easily, and you have enough cap space, in my opinion. To match any contract that Jaylen Warren gets. I don't think Jalen Warren's going to go anywhere for that expensive, especially given the fact that he was a bit injured this year. I think Jalen Warren's going to stay in Pittsburgh and go get you a Quinton Judkins out of Ohio State in the draft. It's a very simple. I think immediately going from Najee Harris to Quinton Judkins, immediately an upgrade. And that solves your running back problem. So immediately, your receiving core would look like this. You had you have George Pickens as your wide receiver 1. You have Calvin Austin in the slot. And then Hollywood Brown is your Y. You pair that with Pat Freiermuth as your tight end. You have Jalen Warren and Quincy Judkins as your running back room. And then finally top it off with a QB like Matthew Stafford. All of a sudden, an offense that is looked at to be mediocre and vanilla has some zip to it just like that. And I think these are some easy moves, not easy moves, because I don't think I think other teams are going to be very, very interested in Matthew Stafford. But if the Steelers are serious about winning, then they should be aggressive in trading for Matthew Stafford. They should use their cap space to sign some of these corners that I just recommended, a Carlton Davis, a DJ Reed, something like that. Fix your cornerback room, please, and pair Joey Porter Jr. with some help. And then on top of that, drafting a defensive lineman like Kenneth Grant, have Cam Hayward take him under his wing. And so when Cam Hayward eventually retires, which I would assume is going to be very, very soon, I don't know how many more years Cam Hayward has left in the tank. I think Kenneth Grant can be the successor. Can the Steelers win a championship with these moves? I don't know. They're in a very, very tough conference. They're in a very, very tough division. A division with the Ravens, a division with the Bengals. It's hard to see if they'd contend, but at the very least, they'd be a more serious threat rather than having a guy like Russell Wilson who was not that good this year. Rather than having a Justin Fields, you have a guy like Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl winning QB, and a top 10 QB in the league. That changes things, and that makes the Pittsburgh Steelers a lot more serious.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.